Hey everybody, Adam here with Hometown Acres. Welcome back. So I wanted to put together a quick update video for you guys on some things that you've asked about and also a couple surprises that we haven't talked about yet. And it didn't make sense to do an individual video on each of them because it's probably only a minute or two worth of content on each topic. So I thought I would just consolidate them all into one video and give you guys some updates. Now, I've got 4 updates for you. The first one is not terribly exciting, but as we go up the list, the projects are going to get bigger and bigger. So stick around, let's get started with the first one. Here is the first update, and that is that we have a new wood stove in our garage workshop. If you remember last fall and winter, we had slowly been working on adding insulation to this pole building. We've got our 7.5 inch and a half pink foam board in the walls, and then we also had installed a ceiling with R21. And then when we did all that, we also had installed a Vermont Castings Aspen wood stove. It's the smallest wood stove they make, and you know, it could bring the garage up about 20 degrees warmer than the exterior temperature. But my biggest complaint about that wood stove was the firebox size. I can only get about 2 hours of burn time out of there before I'd have to restock it. And the whole reason for putting the wood stove in the garage here was, one, for keeping it more comfortable when I'm out here sharpening chains and doing things like that in the wintertime. But also when we get those, 10 degree, 0 degree nights in the evenings, I wanted to be able to get the wood stove going at night and have it keep the garage warm throughout the night so the vehicles would start a little easier in the morning. And I just couldn't do that with that small of a wood stove. And I knew that going into it, but I thought I would try it out, and it turns out it didn't work out. So some of you guys have actually noticed throughout the spring here that we just had some chimney pipe in the corner of the garage here with no wood stove. We sold that wood stove, and then we actually just went to Home Depot and got this Englander 2,000 square foot wood stove. Now this has a 2.5 cubic foot firebox in it. It'll take up to an 18-inch log, and the best part about this wood stove, it was only $900, so much cheaper than a lot of the other ones you'll see out there. It's not cast iron, it's steel, and there's a debate to be said either way which one's better. Steel heats up faster, but cast iron, the warmth will last a little bit longer. But cast iron is also much more expensive. Now with a 2.5 cubic foot firebox, I should be able to easily attain those 8 to 10 hour burn times that I'm after. Our wood stove that we have in the house has a 3 cubic foot firebox, and I usually get 10 to 12 hours with that one. So I think 8 to 10 should be perfect for this. I won't be out here restocking it every 2 to 3 hours. Now you might be asking yourself, why would you buy a wood stove in the middle of May, just in time for all that 90-degree heat, right? Well, the real reason we went and got this now instead of waiting until this fall is because the biomass tax credit was renewed for 2021. There's a 26% tax credit that you'll get on your next year's tax return. And I think a combination of that and rising gas prices, come fall, these wood stoves are going to be hard to find, much like everything else these days. So that's why we got ours now. Anyway, let's talk about update number 2. Update number 2 is going to be related to our sawmill. Now, I spoke to the owner of the company the other day, and he said they are actually a little bit ahead of schedule. So we've been saying this whole time that we're not going to be getting our sawmill until August. It may or may not be here sooner than that, but it's definitely not going to be any later than August. So I wanted to show you guys the saw logs we have started to pile up here as we get closer and closer to August. So we've got those 3 pine logs across the bottom there, 1, 2, 3. I've got a couple of white oak logs here that are going to be more for like woodworking, not necessarily dimensional lumber. And then I've got some poplar logs up here that aren't necessarily the biggest or the greatest, but I figured I would save those as my practice logs. And then here are those 2 massive white oak logs. I estimated that each of these weighs roughly 4,400 pounds. I was able to get the one end up with my pallet forks in the tractor and get a log underneath there to get it up off the ground. But the other 3 corners I was not able to pick up. These logs are just too heavy. But I have heard that white oak is one of the very few hardwoods that you can actually use for ground contact in substitution for treated lumber. So a lot of people said don't even worry about it, just leave them on the ground until the sawmill gets here. Now with that said, I did go ahead and paint the ends of these. I ended up buying anchor seal number 2 instead of the original. And later I found out from doing some research that people actually prefer anchor seal number 1. They say it's a little bit easier to apply, and I found that to be true. Anchor seal number 2 was a little bit difficult to slap on the ends of these logs. So let me know in the comments below if you've got any milling experience, whether you prefer anchor seal the original or anchor seal number 2. But yeah, I've got these 2 oak logs preserved, and that's where they're going to sit until the sawmill gets here. And then my other stockpile of saw logs here, I got up off the ground on runners, and I anchor sealed these as well. Also, I did anchor seal these pine logs. Let me know what you think about that. Is pine worth anchor sealing, or do you usually just leave it go? Now, update number 3 revolves around our equipment storage. If you've been following our channel, you know that we had a portable garage that we used to store the tractor and the side-by-side in. We had a windstorm come through one day and blew it about 100 yards away and bent up the entire frame and ripped the tarp and everything, so it wasn't salvageable. So we've had a couple different alterations to what we want to do to solve our equipment storage. The first one was we wanted to put a lean-to onto the side of our existing garage, but we have a gas line right away that prevented us from doing that. And then the second one was we decided we wanted to attach a garage to the side of the house and have an attached garage for the house. And after we posted that video laying out the plans for that, we actually got some really good feedback and some really good ideas. And a lot of people said what you should do is put an enclosed breezeway between the garage and the house. And that way you can avoid some of the fire code restrictions that go along with attaching a garage to your house. I think one of the ones that somebody cited was when you attach a garage to your house, you have to have 2 sheets of fireproof drywall in between the garage and the house that'll withstand up to an hour and a half worth of burn time. So people suggested by putting a breezeway in between the 2 structures, you can get away from some of those fire code restrictions. In addition, that breezeway is going to give us a brand new entrance to the house with a giant mudroom, which is going to give me a place to clean off before I actually come into the house, and that's going to keep my wife happy. So that is update number 3. Now, update number 4 has to do with this giant field sitting out in front of our house and what our plans are for it. Ever since we bought this property, I've been trying to figure out what I want to do with this field. And one thing that has come to mind is putting in a pond. And I actually already have plans in the works to install a pond this summer. I've already called my county and township conservation districts, discussed through the plans with them. They put me on the right track for what I need to do as far as paperwork goes. The only thing that I have to do, as long as I keep the pond under 1 acre, is I have to have an erosion and sediment control put in place. So I have an engineering company that's going to come out and draw up the erosion and sediment control plan. Really, I think it's pretty basic. I could probably do it myself, but I think there's a lot of maps and, soil charts and things like that I just don't have the experience in. So, obviously with having a YouTube channel, I need to make sure that I'm doing this all legitimately, especially if I'm going to be making videos about it. But really, all I think that erosion and sediment control plan is going to state is that we're going to need silt sock or silt fence to keep stormwater runoff from, washing silt and all those things into the water systems here around our house. But the plan is we're going to put in about a 1/2 acre to 3/4 acre pond right in this area here. You can see there's already kind of a little basin here, which is going to reduce the amount of excavating that we have to do. And we also get a ton of water runoff that comes from the corner of the field up there, right down through the field here. Our downspouts from the house also drain sideways through the ground into that runoff. And there's also a couple of springs that bleed down through there too. So between the water runoff, our downspouts, and the springs, we have plenty of water that's going to feed this pond. So I'm thinking if we get it dug sometime July, August, something like that, we should have no problem having it full by wintertime. And hopefully we can build our own ice skating rink on our own property instead of having to trek all that equipment over to my buddy's pond. So now that you guys know that our plan is to put a 1/2 acre to 3/4 acre pond out here in the middle of the field, I'm trying to think of what I want to do after that. What do I want to put around the pond? And we're going to have the sawmill here, so we can pretty much build just about whatever we want. I'm kind of thinking that I might like to put the sawmill pavilion next to the pond. Maybe call it, pondside sawmilling or something like that. Let me know what you guys think down below. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video or you have some other ideas for us, leave us a comment down below. Give us a big thumbs up. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.